right. Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, folks. I actually had the music muted the whole time, so you weren't listening to any stream beats at all. But we'll figure this out eventually. I'm BWO. You probably see me around if you were watching Universe at all on the Twitch stream. I was on the dev track for 3 days straight. So, what a great way to sort of end streaming the universe by streaming one more time with Gleb. Gleb, you want to introduce yourself and say hello?
Hey everyone, I'm Gleb Bahmutov. I'm VP of Engineering at Cypress.io, and I'm here to talk about GitHub Actions, apparently.
Yes, excellent. And folks, thanks if you're watching us on the stream right now, to say hello in the chat. Let us know how the feed's looking. I do know a delay in my voice, and I had that fixed on my other channel and totally forgot to fix that here. So bear with me. New setup, new camera, new angle, and yeah, we'll be working through all that stuff eventually in the next couple of weeks. But Gleb, you work at Cypress, correct? And
That's true.
Cypress is something that honestly I don't even know when it came out, like when it came around, but it's just always been around as far as like the sort of premier choice for end-to-end testing for JavaScript. I've used a couple different tools in the past, and I'm excited to learn more about it. So, do you want to give us like a brief introduction of what Cypress is?
Absolutely. So imagine you write a web application or a website. Well, at the end of the day, do you know if it's working for your users, right? Not for you on your local machine, not in CI, but actually when your user goes to your web application, tries to use it. So it was always difficult because we didn't have tools that actually could control the browser very well and work with modern web applications very well. So Brian Mann, 6 years ago, decided, I'm going to write this tool. I'm going to do it because he needed something to test his web applications. And so he decided to use this new fangled thing that came out called Electron, where you had Electron browser built in, but you could control very well. And so he has done this thing where the tests run in the browser, and then he expanded it so that you can control Chrome and Firefox. But the main thing is the end-to-end test runner that works very well with modern web applications. It runs right there in a browser, so it knows when elements appear, disappear, become invisible or visible. It has access to all the browser's APIs, right? So everything you need to write good end-to-end tests is in a single package, which you just do like npm install Cypress, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I didn't realize it was that straightforward. So using Electron, like Cypress is powered by Electron, is that correct?
Yes. So when you install Cypress, it's npm package, but it downloads an Electron-based binary that we build for every platform, and that's Cypress, right? So we built, Cypress for Linux, 2 versions for Windows, and 1 for Mac. And so when you start Cypress, it runs Cypress that comes with built-in Electron browser. But if you have other browsers installed on your machine, it will find it and it will be able to control it.
Gotcha. Interesting. And then how would this compare to, because when you say like end-to-end testing and stuff like that, and interaction with the web browser, like I know about Playwright, I think Microsoft's Playwright, and then the other one, Google, I know it's a very similar name, but how do those compare?
Puppeteer, yeah.
Puppeteer, yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
How do those compare to Cypress then?
So they solve this problem completely differently, right? For example, Puppeteer is a Google project, so they decided to use Chrome Debugger Protocol to control the browser. And Chrome Debugger Protocol, if you ever open DevTools in Chrome, is super powerful because the DevTools is using Chrome Debugger Protocol to control the page, send commands, do everything. So they decided, why don't we connect to the browser using the same protocol and during tests control it? In general, Puppeteer is not a testing tool, it's a browser automation tool. So it's not specifically built for testing. So if you want, for example, to write actual test blocks and before each hooks and after each hooks and add assertions, you need to bring extra packages. So people have to like assemble kind of Frankenstein monsters of Jest and Puppeteer and maybe something else in order for you to launch your browser and control it. And the same with Playwright, right?
Yeah.
But Cypress decided different thing. We didn't want to use Chrome Debugger Protocol, right? Okay. Because we had technical limitations before and so on. So instead, we launch the browser and then we load all our JavaScript, all our test specs right into the browser itself. and we control everything natively. Well, I mean, not natively, like using JavaScript only. So now we're adding back native events, like we can use Chrome debugger protocol and so on. So we're adding those capabilities, but our tests are much closer to the browser environment than sending commands from outside through Chrome debugger protocol.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too, and it actually makes it very enticing too as well. Because I've picked up Playwright and as well as Puppeteer previously just for some one-off interactions, trying to sort of automate certain things. And I felt like the sort of the learning curve, even though it's a pretty straightforward API, the learning curve was kind of high for me at the time of what I was trying to accomplish. So like I sort of just moved on to like you know what, I'll figure out a different way to write these scripts, or like I don't maintain them anymore, mainly because they were just sort of one-off solutions. But that was for more automation and less of testing. But thanks for sort of walking through sort of the differences. And I wanted to actually learn more about the Cypress as a company too as well. Are y'all? You mentioned off stream that you all were based in Atlanta, but you're not based in Atlanta, correct?
No, so we from very beginning knew that we had to be remote, right? Fully remote. So I'm in Boston. We have people in Philadelphia, Chicago, West Coast, South America, Eastern Europe. We decided that we need to hire everywhere the talent is, right? You cannot limit. So as a company, we are about 40 people right now. And you're like, how can 40 people work on a test runner? So we started with a test runner and we tried to sell license to that. And that didn't work. So imagine you're a company and you're like, I need to write tests. And when this startup comes and says, pay me for a license, invest all this time. And then if we fold, well, you just wasted all this time, right? So that was a constant worry. So we decided, we're going to give away everything as open source. So Cypress is absolutely open source project, MIT license forever, right? Will be forever. No feature limitations. There is not a beta and a pro version of Cypress. No, completely. You can use everything yourself. Fine. But for a company, when you run tests, we by default take screenshots on failure, so you know what happened. We take video of a whole test run automatically on every platform, nothing to install. So if you're a company and you run it in CI, where do all these test artifacts go? Where are all the test results? So we provide that as a service to record that, so you can privately store all the test artifacts from any CI. So that's how we make money. We have a Cypress dashboard, which is optional, completely add-on product, but makes sense for companies. And when we expanded it, we added analytics, test parallelization, all through the use of a dashboard. And that's how we make money. Right, by providing commercial separate service for companies that run a lot of tests.
Excellent. Yeah, so you reached out and we connected about this. Well, sorry, I need to actually share my screen, but we connected about this. Sorry, first day on the new stream, but this is a GitHub action, and y'all made the decision to leverage GitHub Actions to help people incorporate Cypress in their sort of end-to-end testing scheme. Folks, also thanks for the follows too on the Twitch stream. I do have the chat open, so if you do have any questions about Cypress or GitHub Actions, we both can probably answer questions from either bucket. So definitely leverage the chat. But if you don't know about GitHub Actions, real quick, these are sort of ways to provide automation to your repositories and to your projects. These could be web projects or any types of projects. But what's really nice about this is that the sort of integration with Cypress is pretty seamless. Here at GitHub Actions, you can sort of add stuff to your CI. And that's we'll stop the GitHub Actions commercial for now. And but here, I actually wanted to sort of learn more about Cypress and about this action. So do you want to explain sort of what you all are doing with the GitHub action here and how it sort of integrates with Cypress?
Yes. So Brian, as you know, running tool locally is the easiest thing you can do, right? That's why there's a joke, works on my machine.
Yeah.
The most important thing from day one for me is to set up automated tests on CI, on a separate machine where every commit is tested. So I had a lot of experience over last 15 years setting up Jenkins and Travis and GitLab CI, running everything in-house. right? And using off-the-shelf, like external commercial CI providers. So you give me the name of any CI provider and I'll tell you my experience with it. So from the very beginning, we concentrated on making sure Cypress can run on any CI provider like that, right? So we have a list of OS dependencies, we have Docker image repository on GitHub, with all our dependencies, and then a bunch of Docker images of Cypress pre-installed. From a very first moment, we made conscious decision that we want to show an example of running Cypress on every CI. So I've written examples for each CI. When we saw GitHub Actions, which came out, what, a year or 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yes.
Probably a year ago. Okay. We kind of looked at it like, oh, wait, this is pretty powerful. I can write my CI code using JavaScript, right? And this is like such a big shift, because when you need to write a CI configuration file, right now, every CI is like copy paste an example from the docs, push it. Oh, wait, I forgot a comma. Oh, wait, this variable doesn't interpolate correctly. Oh, wait, how do I set up caching here, right? And so this constant iteration loop of like this push, see if it works, try to fix it, push it again. It's very frustrating. And so we decided to abstract this. So GitHub Action that we've written, well, that I've written, abstracts all Cypress install, shenanigans, right? The caching, the running, the verification, right? So that our users don't have to think about it. Like literally right now, in order for you to run Cypress on GitHub Actions, it's a single YAML, like users cypress-io/GitHub Action. That's it.
Yeah.
This is the basic example. And it takes care of everything, right? It installs it if it's necessary to install, it verifies it, it caches, right? It runs npm install for you using npm or yarn, depending on what it finds in your repository. And it works. And you never have to think about it, right? So our motivation was make our users' lives easier. And I think with power of JavaScript and the innovation of GitHub Actions, because I used Azure pipelines before, and like, no offense, but it's tough.
I'm not offended.
It's just amazing because GitHub Actions run on top of Azure pipelines, really. Under the hood, it's the same VMs that come up and so on. But it's so much easier to actually just program everything in JavaScript, right? Which is kind of unusual. And so this was 2 years ago. We started, it's pretty popular action. We put it on Marketplace. I use it myself all the time because I need an example, for example, of some app. I create a repository and I immediately add GitHub Action, right? And it just runs. Like there is no authentication to configure, nothing. Like it's such a winning combination. And to be honest, Microsoft has not paid me any money to say this, right? But I'm a big fanboy of GitHub Actions. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, they do pay me a lot of money to say I'm a fan of GitHub Actions, but yeah. So like leveraging, including the action itself inside your YAML file, that's the first step. But how do you basically how would I add test? So if I wanted to test if somebody clicked a button or whatever the hello world of Cypress testing is, do I need to build a separate YAML file or a JavaScript file?
So that's a separate thing, right? So we assume that you have Cypress
installed in npm
dependencies, right? That you ran it once locally, and we can go through these steps, right? Brian, review today if you want to. We can start a new repository. And when you install Cypress and you run it first time, it will scaffold a couple of example spec files. So if you want to do that, we can do that. And then we can add, just copy paste the action that I showed there, the basic one, and it will run on GitHub Actions from itself.
So I do have a project.
Live demo.
Yeah, so I do have a project that is pretty straightforward. It's a Next.js project. So I wonder if we can leverage that. I just need to I need to clean up some stuff maybe. Okay, I'm good. So yeah, this should pull the latest, which is main. And for context, folks, this is the project that I have. It's just a simple, nice little digital garden to have links to all my social stuff. So we'll work with that. And real quick, let me set some things up to make sure. Since I'm sharing my full screen, I want to make sure I'm not sharing too many things.
Private passwords.
Yeah. Excellent.
Everyone takes screenshots.
All right.
Okay. If you want to start in a different branch, or if you want to work on this one,
yeah. Let's try Cypress. We'll go there. Oh, I swear I know how to use Git. There we go. So you're saying I could just do npm install Cypress?
Do you use yarn or npm here?
Honestly, I think I don't know what I'm using. I do have yarn actually.
Okay, yeah, I see yarn. So why don't we use? And you also have package lock JSON, so you have both.
Yeah, I do.
So Cypress is a dev tool, right? So you probably want to do -D, so you save it as a dev dependency.
Got
Cypress, it. Yeah. Let's do this.
And I use both npm and yarn in different projects, so I just type the first one I think of, and never.
Do the same, yeah.
Yeah, part of the reason why I have both of them in there. But yeah, just simply adding yarn, and I want to say I'll go out on a limb. I probably have 0 tests for this project too as well. So I actually started this from a template from one of my friends actually created. So
we're talking to the Next.js team, right? So we're adding Cypress template there as well. So eventually, when you scaffold Next.js app, there'll be a template with like Cypress pre-configured. But what's happening now, it's downloaded Cypress npm, which downloads whatever operating system Cypress binary. I see like it's downloading Cypress Electron package, and it will place it on your machine in your like home folder cache folder.
Okay.
So, but you never have to download the same version of Cypress binary again because it's like 100 megabytes.
But what if if you all ship a new version, does it check to see and then validate that and install it in the latest one?
Yeah, so in a cache, it will actually keep different versions of Cypress. So if one package, like in a project, uses one version, no problem. It will be cached separately and never overwrite it. And then we also have like, Cypress prune that will like clean up all those binaries because they take up. Okay. So the one thing that we want to do right now is probably like see Cypress in action. So why don't you do yarn Cypress open? Cypress open. Okay. So this is your first time. It verified Cypress, right? And you need to open it. And it noticed that, Brian, you never used Cypress in this project before. So it actually scaffolded a bunch of examples, right?
Excellent.
By default. And, fine, we can delete them later. But these are all different spec files, like all different tests.
Okay.
And notice that when you click on that, it starts Chrome that it found on your machine, and you see browser window open, right? And you can see in iframe on the right a website. Well, in this case, we use like example.cypress.io.
Yeah.
And so it's an actual website, right? Like you can interact with it. It's there. On the left, you see all extra, like what we call command log. So these are all different tests.
That's awesome.
Right, but finished. And if you click on one, or like any one of them, it expands and it shows individual test commands, right, that just ran. And so you can see that it visited a URL, cleared cookies, got cookies, ran assertions, those are the green things. So this is end-to-end test. It actually interacted with live website.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So out of some curiosities too, because I've done some end-to-end testing, and I just want to shout out Divster.gam is saying that he loves Cypress, seen it grow from the start, and also thinks Actions just makes it even more powerful. So shout out to them for dropping that in the chat. But when I think of end-to-end testing, so do I need an internet connection for this to work? Is that correct?
Well, you're testing example.cypress.io, so it has to go there.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And visit that, right? Just like your browser. But we want to test your site that you're running locally.
Yes.
Right.
So I can swap that with localhost.
Right. So why don't we do that, right? Because I think that might be kind of cool. So you can close the browser window.
Looks like I canceled the Cypress. Was that?
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
So you probably want to open like your code editor, right? So we can write tests. Okay. So when you did Cypress open, it noticed that you didn't have any Cypress files, so it scaffolded two things for you. It scaffolded Cypress folder, right, in green. That's where those integration spec files were. So you have integration, right? So if you expand that folder, you'll find the example. So
my cookie
we can
spec.
delete that, and this is how like a typical test looks, right?
Yeah.
We use Mocha syntax, so we have it, and then the name of a test, and then inside you have callback, and you have all commands chained of this like global site object. So if you want to visit a site, you say site visit and give a URL. If you want to find element using CSS selector, you say site get and then selector. And notice like in line 16, we found an element and then we clicked on that. And Cypress has all these built-in things where it says, do I have this element? No. Okay, let me try again. Do I have this element? No. Let me try again. So it doesn't depend on like the way your application is written. So you can use any framework.
It's
right?
it's
all
what
it
they.
does.
It sounds like it mimics the user experience. So like the user doesn't know what my database tables are called, but they just know that there's buttons and they can click them.
Exactly. And it has built-in things. So for example, before it clicks on a button, it will check, is my element covered by something else? If yes, I'll wait and I'll like poll until that model goes away. Maybe the button is disabled while like the app is doing something, and when it enables it. So the click will wait for the button to be enabled. Like always built-in things like a real user would, right? So you don't have to think about things and add all these assertions.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So you want to write a test for your app?
Yeah, I mean, we could write a test to honestly. So you're gonna my testing skills are kind of rusty. I tend to do a lot of smoke tests when I do end-to-end testing. So like making sure that my Twitch embed actually shows up on the page, or that certain buttons are existing. I used to have a login button, which I removed, but like things like make sure the login button actually shows up, things like that. So
why don't we do a simple thing, right? Like you have a title, keeping it 100% on the internet, right? Like why don't we load the page and make sure this text is there?
Yeah,
right.
I like that idea.
So and we don't even have to test the local site, right? We can, even though if you want to start it locally, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we do the following? Maybe in that Cypress integration, just delete that examples folder completely, right? Like we see how it's integration. No, leave the Cypress, right? See how you have in Cypress, like delete all the spec files because we don't need those.
Got it.
But they kind of show like all capabilities of Cypress by default, so and just create like a new spec there. So usually like spec.js or anything. Yeah. Perfect. And if you want to type something like it, and then show it as and then the name of the test will be probably shows title. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And this is a function.
And then a function, callback, where we'll put all commands. By the way, if you don't provide a callback function, it will still show the test, but it will show it as skipped, right? Kind of like to do. So you will still see it. It's just you haven't implemented it yet.
Okay. And did I get this correct? That it's going to have the arguments? Yeah.
Right. But it's a callback function, not just an object, right? but a callback function like, yeah. And inside, maybe just do cy.visit.
So just, CY, okay.
Like Cypress, yeah. Okay, so one thing, notice that it actually doesn't stay Cy, right? Because it's a global variable, right? When you run Cypress test, it will be available. So the one thing, the nice trick in this JavaScript project is to do this, and I'll post it in your chat. You see this / reference types equals Cypress, right? If you just post it as this comment as a first line in your file. I put it in the chat in Zoom.
So you're saying the
reference, reference types, and then close it. But types, did you spell correctly?
No.
Types.
Interesting.
Okay, now do you see this now?
Yeah.
Right. So now it understands everything because we include TypeScript definitions.
Gotcha.
For a variable.
Okay.
So now, you even in this JavaScript project, it all works right out of the box. And so if you hover over every command, let's say visit, it will actually show like help for this command.
That is nice. It's nice to see the benefit of TypeScript in action too as well. We definitely had some previously TypeScripted powered projects, but I've never actually leveraged VS Code to see these properly. So it's nice to see the value right there.
Cypress is so old, it's written in CoffeeScript. We now moved it away from CoffeeScript to ES6 and TypeScript. Because when it first started, right, JavaScript was in such a bad shape where it was so much easier to program in CoffeeScript. And so that's a historic thing.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of CoffeeScript back in the day. And I wanted to take a time out real quick. And Paul Wan John, I'm pretty sure I got your last name, Wanjoey. He wants to know the take of writing tests outside the main repo, if that's a thing to take in consideration.
Yeah. So imagine you just trying to evaluate Cypress. Well, it's quite, big tool. So you don't want to put it right in the main repo and have everyone install it when we're doing npm install or yarn install.
Yeah.
So it's completely fine to kind of investigate it and do proof of concept where your tests are in a separate repository.
Oh, right? Yeah, but because you can actually call to the URL.
Your site live.
Yeah.
Right? But after a while, it will become hard to keep it up to date and in sync with main code. Our philosophy is that with time, you really want to update the test and the code at the same time. So when you push the commit, it runs the test against that code and keeps it in sync. But it's fine to start it in a separate repository.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I could even see like if I only wanted to run tests like on Netlify URLs, like being able to actually leverage that URL and see when that changes. Yeah, I honestly could see getting really crafty with this. I'm sure the Cypress community has already solved those problems, so I don't need to solve those all. But I think we'll solve this test and try to, I guess.
So what do you want to test? Do you want to start the site locally, which in a separate terminal, and test like localhost 3000?
Yeah, let's do that.
Or do you want to?
Let's do that. I could start my
practice.
My next server, and then we can practice that too as well. So I've got the 3000 here.
So here's the best practice. Take that URL and go to the VS Code and open Cypress.json. So we had Cypress, which is the thing, and Cypress.json file that we scaffolded, and this keeps like all the global settings.
Yeah.
In this case, the setting that you want to change is called base URL, single word.
Is it a capital like this? Does it matter?
It's like base URL. It's like camel case, right? Lower, yes. Yep.
Okay.
And surrounded by double quotes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, got
Add double quotes around this.
That makes sense.
It's a JSON file. Yes. Okay.
Rookie mistake.
And so save it. And now inside the title spec, you can do site visit, and because we put the base URL, you can just say, no, it will be added automatically.
Oh, really?
Just like slash, yeah.
Oh, so this...
like a string, yeah.
Got it.
That's it, saved. And now start Cypress in another terminal, and let's see if it works.
And
so this, leave it, yeah, and then the moment of truth. Every time, right?
Yeah.
Like demo, it's a moment of truth. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, this is nice because I remember using like tools like I think it was Nightwatch, was it? There's a couple other ones back in the day, probably like 4 years ago, that I was leveraging, and it was a lot. There's a lot of setup, and I would probably only just get enough to like test a title and then move on. But I like that there's a lot of built-in stuff too as well. And I wonder, is this...
Well, right now something is not going right.
Yeah, I wonder...
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
It just took a while for next.
Oh, you know what it is? I've got a lot of functions that are running to build the site the first time, so that might actually slow the test down.
But notice this, right? So visit was smart enough. I think by default we allow up to 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Right, for the page to completely load. And visit will fail if your server doesn't respond, if it doesn't respond with something like text HTML, or if it doesn't respond with something like 200 status code, if onload event doesn't fire, if there are any errors thrown out. Like by default, it already checks you. It's like a smoke test right now.
Yeah.
So now we can see this loading, right? Yep. So we want to check if keeping it on the internet is there. Right?
Yeah.
So the best thing for this is probably to use site.contains command.
Okay.
And so don't close anything. Just go straight to your editor.
Yep.
And just say after that, like next line, site.contains. And then just the text that you wanted. Yep.
And then if I hit save, will this update here?
Wait.
Oh,
just go to a browser. Yeah. The browser that is already running.
Yes.
Okay. Notice. See the command is already there?
Yeah.
And so here's a cool thing. When you hover the command, it actually shows the element that it found. You see it's highlighted?
Yeah.
So you know that you didn't accidentally find the text somewhere else.
Yeah.
And another thing, it's a live application in that iframe. But when you hover over different commands, you will notice it. We actually take dump snapshots when we notice something has changed. So you will see your application, how it looked at that particular moment, right, in time. So you'll see how it worked, right?
Yeah, that is pretty nifty, and I can see why a lot of people are sort of excited about Cypress. So I'm curious at this point, since we have we have roughly around 25 minutes, and folks, thanks for joining in and saying hello. I think these Twitch handles are super hard to say out loud, but I'm gonna just power through and say diverse the got gam node applications. How easy to just set up Cypress tests, asking for a friend. I think we literally just set up some Cypress tests, and this is a Next.js application, so it is powered by Node. But hopefully that answers your question. And then Sean's saying he loves the Cypress UI.
Thank you. I would say for a Node application, you might think how easy it is to test the code, not the website, but the code that's running in Node, like access a file system, right? Right now, Cypress is not built for that. We only test code that runs in a browser, like actual website. And you can also unit test any code that can run in a browser.
Yeah.
So like no file system access. From your test, you can access Node, but it's a different thing. So we test everything that runs in the browser. Brian, let's see GitHub Action in action. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like we should be taking action with GitHub Actions.
Yeah.
Pun intended. So I should be able to, hypothetically, I should be able to grab this basic action, and it would run my basic test that I have already.
Yes, but remember what you did before, right? You had to use Yarn to install.
Yeah.
You had to start the application. And so fine. So what I've done in my repository when I was doing this GitHub action was provide examples. So this is pretty common case to use Yarn, right? It's pretty common case to start application and then run the test. So notice, like right above basic, we have a long list of examples, right? Like how to do things like start server before running the test is right there, right? Like right in the middle. So if you search for like slightly lower, a few things. Yep. So you want to like click on start server, right? So this is the action that probably is more appropriate for us.
Yeah.
So basically you can configure the GitHub actions using with and then provide settings for that action. So in this case, our action understands that if you pass start, you probably want to execute this in the background, and then Cypress will run the test. And then GitHub Actions will clean up all those background processes. So I think we should probably do something like this.
And I can put my next dev, which I think actually is my npm start. I might have had that set up.
Yeah, you can always check it,
Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and add this to my actions folder. Which I have in my workflows, and I have one action already. So we'll go ahead and add another file and call it Cypress. So I remember that is what it is. And then I promised to check this, and I think npm start higher. Where are my scripts? There we go. I actually don't have start. I just have npm.
Yeah, you do have start. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I do have start. Oh, there it is. Next start.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, we'll just go with that. We'll just leave it as is. Because I don't know if I actually need. I don't really need the dev server running.
The only other thing that, do we want to use Yarn to install? Probably yes. So to use Yarn, we have to look at the README of action. I already forgot. I think it looks if you have yarn.log file, and if yes, if you search for Yarn.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of. Let's just see if it works. Okay.
Yeah, it says the log file, the yarn log file is found.
Okay. So it should be fine by default.
Okay.
Okay. Let's commit and push it.
Excellent. So I know that I can do a terminal. If it doesn't show, I'm not really a VS Code user. I've been practicing it for the past couple months. I'm more of a Vim person. So all these files are good to add, these JSON in the Cypress folder?
Yes. Yeah. So we definitely modify package.json, right? We added Cypress depend. Yarn log automatically generated. And Cypress has Cypress folder and Cypress JSON. And you added the GitHub workflow file. By the way, I'm a big fan of having multiple workflow files. Like, don't put everything in one workflow. Just keep them separate.
I'm a big fan because I've seen people put it all in one. And actually, so GitHub Actions does have a limit of how big your file can be, like as far as like KBs. And I've actually seen people hit that limit. So that's also another good reason to separate that stuff as well. Yeah, it looks like the chat's starting to pick up a bit too as well. Order pizza if the test pass action. I need to write that actually. I learned from HashiCorp that they actually have a way to provision pizza. The Domino's API is actually pretty good for anybody who cares.
By the way, so one thing we use to actually test our action, right? So GitHub has a bunch of stuff for testing actions, but they're all kind of like, not scaffold, like sandbox.
Yeah.
Right, things. And then you kind of make sure the right calls are made. I believe, and I've used it in my own actions, but for this particular GitHub action, if you look at our repository, right, we do something else. If you look at our GitHub workflows folder, like if you scroll all the way up, right? So if you look at our workflows, boom, we actually run this action in a bunch of scenarios where every scenario is a subfolder in examples. And the way you use local action, notice like, for example, Firefox on line 32. So this is an example how to run Cypress tests in a Firefox, because GitHub Action environment by default has Firefox pre-installed, just like Chrome, right, browser. So we actually do use and then local file path. So this repository tests itself in a different scenarios, like complete thing, right? And that's how we kind of know that it works.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. And I've just pushed up my I guess I could start
Yeah.
Got it.
Look at the
Thanks.
actions, right? Like,
Well,
so our workflow was configured on push, right? So it should already be running.
oh, you know what? Yeah, you're right. So I don't need to create a PR.
Right. So if you click on actions, oh, I see it's running.
Excellent. And
Right.
yeah, I see our new
The
visualizer.
new UI.
Yes. Just launched this week. We could also click through and see the job running as well.
Okay, so setup job is Varana. Ooh, that doesn't look right.
Yeah, it looks like next start failed. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to use next dev. I've actually never used next start. I know it's actually built in the template, but I think I'm gonna need to switch that out.
This is something interesting. Before you do that, right?
Yeah.
Notice how Cypress actually gives you an error. It says, okay, when I started, I know that you defined base URL. So we tried pinging that URL a couple of times, right? And it has not responded. So this is interesting because your server probably takes a little bit longer than we expected.
Yeah, and I think we noticed that too when we first opened it. It took a little bit to do the build, which I should definitely fix later. But for now,
but it's fine. If you go to our action, because it's such a common use case, right, for the initial server to take a while to build and transpile everything, if you look at our examples, you can actually wait for URL to respond. So if you go back to the README file and search for wait, you can just see how it says wait on?
Yeah.
You can just add this as a parameter to our action, and then it will start your server in the background, ping that URL for up to like a minute or two, all right? And once it responds, then it will kick off Cypress.
Excellent.
So we can just try that, right? And
yeah, let's try that. We'll make sure this is 3000 as well.
Yeah. Okay. I think this would be.
Not the best commit message, but we'll run with it. Excellent. So
it's fine. It's fine.
Trigger our new actions, and I'm still getting used to this dark mode. This might not a popular opinion, but I'm not a fan of dark mode. Just in general, I love light mode. But you know, I gotta find bugs, so I need to use this thing.
It's a little bit too dark, too high contrasty, you know?
Yeah.
I think like maybe slightly less dark would be nice. I'm a big fan of VS Code dark mode, right, and dark themes. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of a browser dark mode.
Yeah, this is easy on the eyes, and I think everything you need to see is there, and it has a nice contrast between the different levels of where you're looking at. I think we have a lot more iterations that are coming down the road. We actually have, well, we're calling it, I guess, codename color mode, but being able to do like the contrast for red, green, colorblind, or accessibility. That's all going to be built in, so you can actually leverage different, not just dark mode and light mode, but you'll be able to leverage different modes.
I've heard about that. It's really nice.
Yeah, and I think we honestly, I don't know if we even announced that, but anyway, it's out there.
It's out there.
Yeah, I think our CEO actually did mention it on Twitter.
So the one thing you notice that it installs things, right? Wait, I think, look, it says exit status 1 from next start.
Yeah, I think next start is not gonna work for us. I'll need next dev because I think there's some extra.
But you probably then you have to do like yarn
install.
Next dev. No, like yarn next dev, because next is a locally defined dependency. So why don't you try it from a terminal? Let's see if it works locally with your next dev, right? Because we don't have anything installed globally. I think you started in a second tab, right?
This one is Cypress.
Okay. So now try your next dev. Okay. This seems like that's the command we.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna run with this one, and then yeah, here we go, doing it live.
So if you look at the examples in our repo, you will see how you can, for example, store screenshots, videos, right? Like on GitHub, so that.
Oh, excellent! You're leveraging the artifacts. Yep.
Yes, yeah. So you will download
Beautiful.
the zip. The only thing there is that the screenshots will be generated if a test fails. Then it takes screenshot automatically at that particular moment. And so you'll see the commands, like the website. Videos are always generated.
Yeah.
Right? So if you do, instead of a yarn Cypress open, if you decide yarn Cypress run, that's the command that runs, headless browser, right? And just saves the video.
Yeah, and I think Paul was actually mentioning this as well, that you can prevent merges if they fail. Which this conditional here is you can do whatever you want after a failure.
Right.
So I think this is these. So basically, I guess as you were explaining, if this fails, that screenshot will get uploaded
right
to the actual failure, which is nice. Like it's a nice little feature, I guess, that not a lot of people think of, the sort of like the green and the red, or the good and the bad. So it's a nice little addition there.
I've been looking at expression syntax for GitHub Actions. It's pretty powerful. Like you can set output variables, use them in other jobs and stuff. Like it's nice. So this is the V2, right, of GitHub Actions, the first syntax. But when it just came out, like I wasn't a big fan at all. But now it's all good.
Yep, looks like we're getting some.
Okay. Yeah. I see what it says starting, right?
Excellent. Yeah, I actually picked this site because I was thinking it would be a simple example. And then as I am seeing this, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's actually a lot of complicated things happening in the build that I probably should have grabbed my other site that was a little more simpler. But, you live and you learn.
What did it say? Module not found? Something.
It's because... All right, so it's because I'm using Relay that's actually doing persisted queries. So when I said this is a complicated example, this actually is a complicated example. So I'll need to actually run Relay before this, which is a nice... now we only have roughly 10 minutes. We can either dig in and do this, or I can copy and paste and do this in the easier project.
No, we're already there, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we, instead of localhost, right, test the production side that you have?
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea.
Change URL in Cypress JSON file, and instead of localhost, just set your actual.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. But the fact that we're already there, it's gonna make me want to finish this later.
Absolutely, and feel free to ping me on any of our chat channels on Twitter. And this base URL you can override, for example, even in your YAML file for environment variable. So you can build your local site test it. So in this case, we don't need anything here. Like we don't need any whole block is gone, right?
Yeah.
You can override so that you run local site, deploy it, and then say test this site, and maybe even run like just subset of tests, like some small test after deploy. Okay, so
with the base URL, because like what in practice I've had before is that you don't like testing live URLs has always been a super a big challenge. So it seems like you could have tests running on the base URL, which is localhost, and tests running on the live site as well, which is pretty elegant.
And GitHub Actions. Oh, so my favorite thing about GitHub Actions is combining with GitHub Pages. Yeah. Because in your workflow, you can say on deployment event, if status is successful, that means if one GitHub pages has deployed, you get a notification, your workflow runs, and then you can run like some smoke test against that using Cypress. And you can get URL even hard-coded or from that deployment event to GitHub pages. So I have blog posts showing that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I like doing a lot of experimenting with GitHub pages. One of my examples in my talk 2 days ago at GitHub Universe was Storybook, and Storybook being the component design system for building components in your front-end app. And I leveraged GitHub Pages originally to have a separate deployment for just the Storybook that was separate from my main site, which I have half set up on this BW Live site. But the beauty of this is that I'm leveraging Netlify for that. I could actually leverage the same deployment pipeline for Netlify, but it's deployed to 2 different sites, thanks for the GitHub Actions too as well, which has been wonderful.
Well, if you use Netlify, we have their own Netlify build utility right now, right, where they can run a build. And I've written Netlify Cypress plugin for that build so that it runs the test there. And because the Netlify build plugin system knows that deployed URL, it will just pass it to that plugin, so you don't even have to think about the URL that you're testing. You can test local or deploy
that's beautiful. Yeah, because they have those atomic deploys. And do you have integration with Vercel as well?
Yes. So for Vercel, if you run on GitHub Actions, the deployment event is there. Just go to my blog, and I'll show how you can test the deploy site and test the preview as well. So you can do the full circle. Okay, well, we seem to be running the test, right?
It's a little easier when you're not worried about compiling persistent queries in GraphQL.
So right now it's using the built-in Electron 87, right?
Beautiful.
Loaded the site, all passed, right? If we stored that video as an artifact, we could have downloaded, watched it.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing too as well. Because so artifacts stay up on your GitHub logs for up to 30 days. So it'd be amazing to have these artifacts actually be uploaded. So that way, if you have a project that's constantly iterating, or you're practicing, what is it, agile methodology, always ship, which is honestly, that's what you wanted to be doing. You can always go back and say, hey, someone broke something or something changed. Let's go back to a previous iteration and see what happened, how we got to this point.
I like, if you store with videos, imagine you have a failed test run, you download video, and when you go to a previous successful test run, download the video and just play them side by side and see where things diverge. And then it'll be clear, oh wait, this player did not load, so that's why everything is off.
Yeah.
So you can do that.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, too, as well, the fact that you have this as an action, it's open source, Cypress is open source. Folks can, this is Open Source Friday, so you could actually dig in. And if you have an example, it sounds like I threw out Vercel and Netlify, but it sounds like those examples are solved. But yeah, if you have an example, it seems like opening up issues and seeing if y'all can contribute to that sounds like a great way to get involved.
Absolutely. You'll find the source code for the action right there. It's, it's set up for testing. When you open pull request, like all those examples run. So we're not accidentally going to break a bunch of users. And it's all versioned. At the end, so in our example, you use like GitHub Actions /v2, which is like the latest version published of v2. If you really want to be specific, you can put a commit there. So you lock yourself to a specific version of our action. So that for sure, like everything is immutable. So it's up to you how strict you want to be in respect to versioning and what action you want to use.
Yeah, and I appreciate you walking through this with me. I had not, as I mentioned earlier, I might have said it on stream. I said it before when we started this call. I haven't tried Cypress out, but the get started seemed pretty trivial. What wasn't trivial was my build command, my build system. So that's what got us hung up. But I have enough information to actually make that work. I know I can make it work. It's just, I didn't think I had 10 minutes. It'd probably take a little more than 10 minutes to troubleshoot. But yeah, I have Cypress in my site. I've got it in a PR, so I'm going to be merging that later today. And I appreciate you, Gleb, walking through this process with me. I'm curious if people want to get involved with the Cypress community. or as well as like add Cypress into projects? Do you have anywhere that we can point them to?
Yes, go to Cypress website. We have links to our documentation, our examples, everything. Just find cypress.io. There's a link to docs, right? And we do have a lot of documentation, and you can find everything, all right? And if you have any questions, we have a chat channel, we have Discord channel. I'm answering everything on Twitter and everywhere. So no, don't be a stranger.
Excellent. Yeah. So, folks, thanks for sitting around with us and doing Open Source Friday. These are streams we do on Fridays. We'll be taking a break for the holidays that are happening. So, everybody, happy Hanukkah if you celebrate that, which I think started this week, and happy other holidays as well. And we're gonna have a really cool lineup starting in hopefully February. So, if you have not yet, definitely hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, follow. And Gleb, hopefully this is like step one of our conversations. We'd love to have you on in the future, talk more about actions. We can talk more details about Cypress. But thanks so much for coming along for the ride and sharing all your information with us.
I appreciate the opportunity, and everyone stay safe and healthy.
Excellent. All right, everybody, stay saucy.